We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Reality Rants. I am Jason Bermas. I hope everybody is having a great day out there. Really bright and early. So, a bunch to discuss out of the gates. First of all, I want to thank my friend in the Bermas Brigade, my neighbor to the north out in Canada, that sent me this book, UnZipped Jeans. We're going to be going over this in the beginning of the show at quite some length. Really the first chapter, just to show you how openly this book advocates in 1997, not only for eugenics, really transhumanism, the end of the nuclear family, but promotes the quote-unquote new woman with Martine Rothblatt right there as that new woman all the way back in the 70s. It actually dedicates this. Let me read it word for word. I don't want to get it wrong, okay? But let's see the author's preface right here. Yes, let's just read this. She's talking about her soulmate, Bina Aspen Rothblatt. Now, that is Martin Rothblatt's wife that stayed with Martine Rothblatt as that transition occurred. She never wavered in her support for the themes and messages of this book. And remember, Bina is also the replicated robot in the TerraSim religion. Can't make this stuff up. Indeed, she never rested in demanding that I finish the book for the benefit of people everywhere, but especially for the women of tomorrow. The women of tomorrow. And back in 1997, to convey many of these ideas, they would have to use the language of that day, which they are now trying to antiquate. They're trying to change all around. So I think it's going to be really interesting when we finally do get to read. I think we're going to just read word for word the preface that outright in the beginning tells you that everybody endorses some form of eugenics, and we're going to have positive eugenics in the future. Really, it was just Hitler and the Nazis and the gang that gave it a bad name. It's a great science. We need to move forward. And, we're going to dissect that word for word in this book today in the first hour. Before we get there, I am also going to play a clip from the war rally out in D.C., Rage Against the War Machine, which I think had some really great speakers and guests. Headlined by the likes of Ron Paul, really the OG in rational thought in government, warnings about globalism, the benefits of communication and non-interventionalism, somebody who's advocated for sound money, someone who's advocated for the reining in of all of the intelligence agencies, CIA and FBI amongst them, somebody who has been a liberty advocate throughout his career, and one of the only people I have seen not corrupted by the system. Headlined by Ron Paul. Wow, what a great thing. And then I had a lot of friends and friends of the show that not only attended and spoke at the event. Now, the event itself, you can find the whole thing. It's about 4 hours long. A lot of people tried to demonize this event. Look, I'm not going to agree with everybody up there. Okay. No big deal. But I do agree that we have a situation right now where we have an openly puppeted regime that is escalating a global conflict to a point where there may actually be no return and hard repercussions for people here in the United States, whether we want to pretend otherwise or not. Where's old Joey B today? Oh, it's Zelensky town. Let's shake a Zelensky hand. What? I believe it's President's Day, and the puppet in chief is over in the Ukraine pledging pension dollars? Pledging pension dollars. How many people here that have stood upright and believed in the system and gone to work 40 to 60 hours a week for 48 to 50 weeks a year for the last 10 to 20 years in a soul-crushing position so they could feed that 401k, so they could invest in their future, so they could pay their mortgage? How many of those people actually took a hit? This administration will never tell you. They'll just be like, you know what? Train derailment over in Ohio, huh? Let's not clean it up. Let's say we're cleaning it up in a controlled burn. Those people are poor anyway, right? You know, it's funny. I was watching Gutfeld last week. And last week, we'll get into another story, but two guests on there that I thought were interesting and worth noting. One, Roseanne Barr, and the other, Kurt Metzger. And actually, I got to meet Kurt this weekend. I'll get into that rant in a moment. Great guy, really fun, really funny. I had a fun weekend, and we'll get there. But Roseanne Barr, in particular, was saying they're trying to kill us. It's because they're trying to kill us. Now, a lot of people can try to disregard what Roseanne Barr says. She can be verbally crass, right? But what she is always is direct. And she's not a dumb person. Okay? Now, does that mean she gets everything right? No. But that's somebody within a very, very, very destructive, disturbing system, Hollyweird, was able to dominate for a long time. I mean, dominate. It's not easy, especially in the era that she came up, late 80s, early 90s, in the sitcom world, to stick around for a few seasons, let around. She was like over a decade. And then not only that, come back, do it again, revive the show, have the #1 show, and then just, it's not about money anymore or profits. It's about an idea set, because the money doesn't matter as much as the resources and the control over your mind does. All right? And that kind of gets me into another story that I want to cover briefly before we hit pasta, before we hit a little unzipped jeans. And then I did an interview like a month ago with the probably canceled podcast. Young lady, Bridget, has kind of an NPR voice where I really get into Rothblatt and a ton of other subject matters, how I came up, really the whole political system. I thought it was a really good one, and really it hasn't been seen by this audience. So it's going to be something we play probably at the end of the first hour into the second hour of Premium. And by the way, also want to thank all of you that have gone premium over at redvoicemedia.com/Jason, redvoicemedia.com/uncensored, are watching that second hour of the broadcast, are supporting the show. I had a great conversation with Ray Dietrich, who's going to be on this week. We're going to be talking the police, and we're going to be talking about these kind of undercover units, which he was a part of. And I think that's going to be a really constructive conversation in light of the Nichols incident and others, quite frankly, throughout history, especially in this country where we kind of have to look to that. All right. The story I wanted to cover that kind of leads me in is one from the UFC, actually. Whoa, we're right. This isn't mixed martial mindset, Jason. This isn't mixed martial mindset. Okay. So basically, Nate Marquardt, ex-UFC guy, ex-Strikeforce guy, Strikeforce champion at one point, and somebody who challenged for the belt, top contender for a long time. Somebody I enjoyed watching fight, had his ups and downs in his career. But he makes a comment that essentially at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, if he's on the West Coast, it's something else. ESPN Plus, which is a subsidiary of Disney, is running a commercial for HIV. Okay? And I don't want to misquote him. Let's see if they have the actual quote without him saying it. Let's take it right here. Okay. So he says, "Wow, disgusting commercial watching at ESPN Plus with my kids and have to tell them to look away so they don't see 2 men kissing." Okay? And look, there he is. He's wearing the Jesus is King, Christian gloves. Now, here was my comment as the same thing happened. I didn't say disgusting. I'm not here to stop anybody's lifestyle. I looked to my brother and I said, first of all, how many HIV positive people are possibly watching this in what is clearly an American, if not just North American market? And honestly, I don't think it's North American because I'm pretty sure that the deal they have running up in Canada is not ESPN Plus. It's with their sister company. ESPN has a sister company called TSN, and they cover the UFC there. Okay, just pointing that out. But in order to watch this card, on ESPN Plus, just like any other pay-per-view, you have to be subscribed to this thing. This is a middle-of-the-day commercial. Okay? Now, I've often talked about on the show, why are there so many drugs for HIV all of a sudden? How many HIV positive people? I mean, I see more commercials now for HIV and preventatives and shots and all these other things to do with HIV than almost anything else, right? Other than what we all went through in the past few years. I'm not even going to say it, but you know what I'm talking about. As far as advertisements go, this is the big thing. And let me say this, I can remember maybe a week back, probably the previous week, because I've been doing it like 8 weeks in a row, where it may not have been 4 in the afternoon. It may have been 7 or 8 or 9. But I remember there was another HIV commercial different than this one, where there was an overweight, effeminate black man, amongst others, talking about how easy he is in the commercial. Like, that's the goo. Like, they're all sitting there talking about each other and why they need to take this HIV drug as a preventative. And he's talking about how easy he is. And where am I going with this? I'm going, who are they trying to sell this to? How much of the UFC audience, the core demographic, which is obviously male, which is in like probably the 18 to 55 bracket for the most part. That's probably the vast majority of their audience, and more than likely straight. Not all of them. I'm not saying gay people can't like the UFC. I'm talking about demographics and business. Period. And it's contrived. Why is this happening? So, in the one particular HIV commercial, it's a lot of guys looking at guys, and then by the end of it, yes, they're kissing in midday. I can understand why Nate Marquardt would be upset with that. But I think the larger picture is, why is this constantly being pushed on us? Why is Big Pharma taken over? And why HIV in particular over the last several years has that been the push? It's a question, I have my speculations about, but we'll get there in a moment. We're going to get here too, unzipped jeans, okay? But first, I want to talk about this weekend. My brother made the long trek, 14 hours from New York. That's about how long it takes to go from the left to the right coast, everybody. For a guy like me. It's not always easy, believe it or not. Not always easy to do, but we tend to do it like in one shot, me and him. He comes over and he gets there late Friday night, watch a little bit of ONE FC. That's kind of what we do, is we watch a lot of fights. Doesn't matter what organizations. And I was lucky enough that one of my buddies here in the Quad Cities is a local comedian. And, I've seen him once over at a mansion, probably like a year and a half ago, as an opener and kind of like a host. Really good guy. He comes over, watches a lot of the fights as well. And last week when he was over, he's like, you know what? I'm opening up for Kurt Metzger. For those unfamiliar with Kurt, very funny comedian. He's the other guest I was talking about on Gutfeld on a completely different show. Often on Jimmy Dore. You see him over there. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, dude, I'd love for you to come. I'll comp you some tickets. Come on down. I'm like, great. My brother's going to be up. I tell my brother. My brother's happy about it as well. He watches a lot of Jimmy Dore. He thinks Kurt's a funny guy. We go there. It's about a 2-hour trip because we go to Wisconsin. Go to a place called Janesville, Wisconsin. Never been there. But hey, my brother's trucking in these things. But I drove this one. He got some sleep in. Fly from America to Australia in 14 hours. Yeah, well, we drive it. We drive it, Mad Cow Mark. That's how big the country it is. And we're only like midway to the left coast. So right away when we get there, I text Donnie. We actually get to have a great conversation with Kurt. The other comedians are really funny. Sit down, have a good time. Hung out afterwards. And I talked a lot of transhumanism and Martine Rothblatt. And I also explained to him about Tesla and their partnership with CureVac. I threw a lot in there. I threw a lot at Kurt. Hopefully I didn't overwhelm you, brother. But, we exchanged numbers, and he actually texted me later interested in Rothblatt. Okay? So when I was explaining this to him, he had seen the robot. He didn't understand the story. In other words, he'd seen the Bina 48 robot, didn't know about Martine, didn't understand, there was a book out there, From Transgender to Transhuman. And that's really what a lot of this is about. You losing your biological identity so they can take control of all biology. Taking charge of baby making in the new millennium. Well, thank you, Martine. Well, thank you. Fantastic. So, my brother and I also got to watch some fights. He took off yesterday. Absolutely love him. Family's important. That's the only reason I didn't go to the war rally. Okay, that'll be a good segue into this. Otherwise, I probably would have put my bootstraps on. I would have taken off after the Thursday show here, and I would have driven out to DC and covered it that way, because they had a really good lineup. I'm gonna play just one speech from here. My boy Pasta Jardula, friend of the show, Bernie Sanders, 2016 guy, all right, has woken up immensely to the illusion of the two-party system. Thought he did a great job up there. And, it's tough sometimes. You're up there in front of thousands of people. I've been there. And I thought he did a great job. He talked about Smedley Butler. So without further ado, let's bring this up and let's play some Pasta Jardula.
Yo, let's give it up for Nick Brown and Angela for putting this on. And let's go with the flow. Free Julian Assange.
Say it again, free Julian Assange! All right, before we get started, I need everybody to take their phone out really quickly and mark yourself safe from a Chinese spy balloon. Could you do that real quick? Go ahead there. So, who knows about General Smedley Butler out here? Right? I can't believe nobody's even mentioned him today. War is a racket. He gave a speech almost 90 years ago, and General Smedley Butler was a senior Marine Corps officer who fought in both the Mexican Revolutionary War and World War I. At the time of his death, Butler was the most decorated Marine in U.S. history. During his 34-year career, he participated in military actions in the Philippines, China, Central America, the Caribbean, and France. But later in his years, Butler became an outspoken critic of the wars and their consequences. In 1935, he gave this beautiful speech called War is a Racket. Just going to read the first paragraph. It says, war is a racket. It has always been. It is possibly the oldest and easiest, most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one which profits are reckoned in dollars and losses in lives. A racket can be best described as something that is not what it seems to the majority of people. It is only a small inside group that knows what it's about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few and at the expense of the many. Out of war, few people make huge fortunes. And the crazy thing is it's the same today as it was back then. War is still a racket. As it was a racket in Vietnam, when the government lied to us about the Gulf of Tonkin. False flags incite and appear to justify war. Don't be fooled, they're still doing it today. But companies like Dow Chemical made millions producing dangerous gases used to suffocate and kill the women and children of Vietnam, destroy their agriculture and their civilization. Has anybody ever heard of napalm? Dow Chemical. And did I mention that all wars are bankers' wars? Let me hear you say it. All wars are bankers' wars. And war is still a racket. As it was in Nicaragua when the CIA conducted a civil war by selling crack cocaine in the United States. They killed black people at home and brown people in Latin America. The prison industrial complex exploded. It's increased almost 700% since the 1970s with mandatory minimums. Tell me, is war still a racket? And did I also mention that all wars are bankers' wars? You're damn straight over there. And war is still a racket. The same way it was in Iraq. When people refused to deal with the fact that Saddam did not have chemicals or weapons. Okay? One man tried to stop the war, but it didn't happen. So I say all wars are still bankers' wars, are they not? You're damn straight. Now, the first thing we have to do is realize that we have no friends here in Washington. For we have a Congress that is more like professional wrestling. The Democrats. And no, let me say this much. They are not the lesser of two evils. These parties, they appear to be oppositions, but they're really not. And what are the Democrats? They are the let's send weapons to Ukraine Democrats, the let's invade Haiti Democrats, the let's sanction the hell out of Syria Democrats, the, oh, I like this one, the we came, we saw, he died Democrats. They're also, the CIA and the FBI are now the good guy Democrats. Basically, they are the Trump derangement syndrome Democrats. In other words, they're just the synthetic left. And the Republicans, are they really any better? Really? I mean, let's not forget that this Ukraine war wouldn't have started if it wasn't for Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell going to Ukraine in 2016 and then talking to Nazis to go invade the Donbass. Mitch McConnell was just seeing Zelensky last year in a delegation with the Republicans. Let's not forget, they're also the Afghan war and the Iraq war, Republicans. Let's sanction the hell of the Nicaraguans, Venezuela, and Cuba because they're socialist Republicans. Let's take on China because of a balloon, Republicans. They are, in essence, we still remember who you are, Republicans. And yes, Matt Gaetz is now floating a bill out there to end the Ukraine war, and that's great. You want to end war, so be it. I'm all for it. Frankly, I think you're a little bit too late because almost 250,000 people are dead. But let me just say this to the Republicans out there right now. Don't think for 1 second, we're going to let you defund a war in Kiev against Moscow and then take that money over to Taiwan and start another proxy war with Beijing. It's not going to happen. Did I mention that all wars are bankers' wars? Let me hear you say it. So here's my speech. It's all messed up as the wind is blowing, but let me just finish up with this. Yeah, let's just ditch it. So this is the hard part, right? We understand what we're up against. We understand that we have no friends here in Washington. So what do? What do we do? This hasn't been the first time this has happened before. They had major protests against the Iraq war. They had major protests against Vietnam. But yet, we're back to where we started from. And I know it's kind of trite to say, hey, we got to come together, but we must. The ruling class has definitely separated us. They got us fighting against each other. So all we can do is get in there and get dirty and have some robust discourse. We got to cancel culture. We got to forget about our isms and talk. We can't play red team, blue team anymore, because if we do, we'll surely die. So I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. Remember that all wars are bankers' wars, and let's do the work. Let's come together. Let's love, let's fight back, and let's rage against the war machine. Thank you all so much.
My man. Great job. Always love watching people that personally I like. You know, I like the guy. I've seen him put in the work. Just great speech. You know, good job, my friend. Really appreciate that. All right. Let's move on to the meat and potatoes of this hour. Unzipped Jeans. Take about, 10, 15 minutes on this book. Then we're going to move it over to this interview with the Probably Canceled podcast. Of course, by the end of the hour, we'll be shifting gears and going to the premium part of the broadcast. You can get the audio free via Podbean. We do that live. We're trying to expand. Again, can't thank Ray enough. You guys have to understand, he's financially taking a bath on me. I know, listen, I know not everybody can go premium on everything. I know everybody's out there. They got an Amazon Prime, right? They got the Netflix, okay? They got the Hulu, ESPN Plus, Disney package. They got cable on time. I mean, again. I'm just telling you that it is amazing to find an outlet that says, you know what? Say what you want. Those are the conversations we have. Say what you want. He appreciates the fact that, I'm bringing you what I believe to be the real news. I'm quoting my sources. And when I'm giving an opinion, I say it's an opinion. But I want people to think about this. Out of all the balloon hysteria, Pasta started with the balloon joke, right? Not having an inside guy like Hirsch did, who was the closest to reality in the alternative media about that whole thing once most of the facts came out? Who was the closest to reality? I didn't get it perfect. Came pretty damn close. Not sure I really got any part of it wrong. But we try to have discernment here. And that's why, we look at historical records. So I'm going to read you this. I wish I could do it in a fine British accent. Like if I could just switch on the Paul Joseph Watson right now, I would. By the way, 148 watching over at YouTube. Can we get 100 thumbs up? Can we get this out there, guys? Can we spread the message of Reality Rants Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. Eastern? So, this is the editor's forward right here. Okay, didn't write this, haven't even highlighted it, read some things. Eugenics is a word that often elicits the most negative images, and rightly so. After all, it was not long ago that the Nazis tried and failed to extinguish the genes of Jews, gypsies, and others. Glad they threw gypsies and others in there. I would have liked them to include the others, such as homosexuals, such as the mentally and physically disabled, right? Went after the weakest, such as the political dissidents, even Freemasons. There was a large group of people that were put into that pool. And in 1927, the United States Supreme Court declared in Buck versus Bell that the eugenic sterilization of the feeble-minded was constitutional. Oh. According to no less a jurisprudential luminary than Oliver Wendell Holmes, the principle that sustains compulsory vaccination is broad enough to cover the fallopian tubes. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. So again, I'm reading a Supreme Court justice decision, a quote, in the very first paragraph of this book, talking about the V to sterilize the feeble-minded. I want everybody just to breathe that in, that's how this book begins and how relevant this book actually is today. Hard to get. You're spending $30+ on the paperback if you want it. Again, Bermas Brigade, thank you so much for giving me this. Okay? Indeed, eugenics is often associated with the image of Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein, who, in seeking to use science to create perfect life, caused great tragedy for his creature as well as for society. And I believe that it was a Ray Bradbury. It's either Ray Bradbury or Isaac Asimov interview. I think I've watched a couple of them recently. I'm going to have to go find those. Maybe we'll play them later in the week. I promised to play that Harari clip. Maybe I should play that too before we play this other one, where he basically says that they're ready to get rid of most of us, and that's why people are feeling uneasy, because they're not part of the next story. You are the feeble-minded. Okay? You get it? And they're telling you this is the Frankenstein model. Oh, lovely. But this view of eugenics is both limited and limiting. The reality is that on some level, we all endorse some notion of eugenics. Oh, do we? Oh, do we now? I think that's a pretty broad spectrum when we say that. But when people are going to decide what stock is better, what stock? Our genetics, in some cases, literally are derived inherently from our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, etc. Those traits do exist. There's something called nature, and there's something called nurture. Okay? Physical attributes aside, which are obvious. When parents adopt a child, they almost always specify certain characteristics, such as race, sex, and age. In choosing a mate, we implicitly make decisions about our offspring. When a Swedish person and a Chinese person choose to mate, they have made a decision about their preference for, or at least the tolerance of, a mixed child. The tolerance for a mixed child. Geez, I thought we were just one species, the human species. But hey, 1997, mixed children. Women have long used various means ranging from consuming the penises of exotic animals to praying to using modern concoctions designed to increase alkalinity and decrease acidity in the reproductive tract in order to increase the chances of having a male. And by the way, this is when they were still referring to things instead of gender as sex and still male and female, right? And haven't pushed the language barriers as far yet. Just want to put that out there. And sperm and egg banking, which allow the genetic consumer literally to choose from a menu of various demographic characteristics, are no longer all that controversial. Personal eugenics has been with us a long time. And in general, the law does not intervene in personal eugenic choices. Blind people are at liberty to produce blind children. There are no laws that forbid procreation by obese or bald people, nor should there be. Can you imagine that? Okay. First of all, obesity, although you may be more prone to be a certain body type at some level, again, that's nurture, not nature, right? It's literally your environment and what you're putting into your body and, what kind of physical activity you're doing. That's a reality. Okay, can we acknowledge that? That's a bit contrived. Or by people who are likely to pass diseases onto their offspring. Oh, you could pass a disease. Ooh. Although there may be some limits in some places on the use of artificial biotechnology, such as sperm and egg banks, to facilitate personal eugenics choices, these restrictions are often avoidable by those who want to use such technologies and have the money to seek alternatives. What, like a Jeffrey Epstein baby-making ranch out in New Mexico when you got that scratch and cheese? Like something like that? Huh. We may disagree about what constitutes biological harm, but we generally agree that a basic notion of human rights includes the right to make at least certain decisions about the type of children that we have. There is, however, new technology on the horizon that will make it possible for people and governments, to have greater control than ever over these eugenic choices. In 1989, Congress initiated the Human Genome Project, which is really the inspiration, according to the back cover for the book, which is being coordinated primarily by the National Institute of Health and the Department of Energy. Oh! The Department of Energy. First of all, hats off to the NIH. I think most of my audience has really fallen in love with the NIH over the past several years. Big fans. Big fans. But again and again and again on this show, we talk about what? The Department of Energy. Because the Department of Energy, in large part, has been a front for massive human experimentation, most of which we don't know about. Over the past 6-7 decades. Department of Energy, mentioned by Annie Jacobson in Area 51, in her book. I actually talked about Area 51 with Ray, not the place, but the book, this weekend. And I talked about Annie Jacobson and transhumanism with Kurt. I live and breathe this stuff, okay? And I do it smiling. We're smiling while reading some pretty dark stuff right here, okay? So, these terms, Department of Energy, they're innocuous for a reason. In fact, when Clinton had to come out with that big binder of a report of the kind of human experimentation we did on people without their knowledge, which just scratched the surface. So many people want to go Tuskegee, Tuskegee, Tuskegee. We have shown you here on this show, as I've reported for over a decade, they gave the feeble-minded, disabled children in this country in Brooklyn hospitals who had terminal cancer, they injected them with things like hepatitis and herpes. Injected them with it. They experimented on mentally disabled children in this country, and we know about it. As you're going to see in the interview we're going to play. Looks like we're only going to get a small piece of it here on the non-premium side. So I'm encouraging you to please support the broadcast. Support the broadcast. Support the broadcast. redvoicemedia.com/Jason. Or just listen to the rest of the show over at Podbean. And by the way, every day we do a show, the whole second hour gets unlocked. I do post little things here and there. I post a little bit more to Rockfin and Rumble. Rockfin in particular, because we have the personal sponsors there, which are great, and I thank you for that as well. But you get them all immediately, everything, whole second hour. Every day I do this, there's a new one released if you're not a premium member over at Red Voice Media. Love Red Voice Media. Top notch. Although most funding for the project comes from the United States, governments around the world are involved in the worldwide research effort intended to map each human gene, of which there are an essential 50,000 to 100,000, and to understand the function of each in most human cells. There is a genetic blueprint or genotype of the entire person. These cells each contain 23 pairs of chromosomes, which consist of deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. A molecule of DNA consists of two strands that resemble a ladder twisted into a spiral configuration that is referred to as a double helix. And hey, we got some 5th grade education in here. I like that. But again, 1997 Human Genome Project, very different. Can we get 100 thumbs up over there? Extra strand of DNA consists of a linear arrangement of units called nucleotides, which are composed of one sugar, one phosphate, and one nitrogenous base. The two strands of DNA are held together by weak bonds between the nitrogenous base, forming base pairs. There are some 3 billion base pairs of DNA. A gene is a specific sequence of these nucleotide bases, ranging from fewer than 1,000 bases to several million. Each gene provide the information necessary to produce proteins that are responsible for individual human traits. Okay, I want to come back to the book later on. We'll probably wrap up with the book as well. But what I do want people to understand is that sex and the genie of life is the first part. And the first chapter is the Holocaust of sex. And they're talking about, again, this is all eugenics. It's again, it literally says personal eugenics, my perfect baby, on page 41. Social eugenics, my perfect society. Positive eugenics, grow the genome. Negative eugenics, gas the genome. Medical eugenics, cure the genome. I mean, bioethics of birth. I mean, this is it. This is it. In fact, I believe the term transgenics is used in the first paragraph or in the preface. But we'll get there. We will get there. Right now, what I want to do is I want to cut to this interview. Again, this young lady, very NPR-like, kind of reminded me of Natasha Lyonne. And by the end of this interview, we are talking about a multitude of things, especially Martine Rothblatt and transhumanism, okay? And I think it's an important topic that we need to keep discussing. That's why it's highlighted on today's broadcast. Look, we could do the clickbaity stuff. We could do the secret super squirrel sources, rumor stuff. We could do the hot topic of today stuff. I'm really not interested. You know, let's make what the hot topic is. Let's have the larger discussion. You know, let's go deeper than just the surface level. So here we go. Here is that interview right now.
My name is Bridget, and I'm your host. And today I am excited to have here with me the legendary citizen journalist and documentary producer, Jason Bermas. We're going to be talking about some fun subjects such as the World Economic Forum and the PSYOP that is Elon Musk. So I'm really looking forward to it because this stuff is really important to both Jason and myself. but Jason has been doing a lot of reporting on it. So anyway, how are you today, Jason?
I am very good.
Good. Yeah, I'm really glad to have you here, and I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, actually, because you are a sophomore in high school, and I was like, whoa, the government's like to a degree that I did not conceptualize at that age. And from there, like that really started my journey of just questioning everything and being skeptical about everything. But I'm sure a lot of people listening have also seen that documentary, Loose Change. So thank you for making that. But also, do you want to talk about a little bit about your background and the work that you do?
Yeah, I guess I'm a documentary filmmaker. Loose Change is probably what I'm best known for, but I did a follow-up film called Fabled Enemies about 9/11 that doesn't focus really on any of the physical anomalies and instead goes into the international intelligence operation and how it was conducted, the role players, the groups like the Pakistani ISI and the Israeli Mossad, and then the continuity of government program here. I then went on to work for InfoWars. I was the first guy that Alex Jones ever gave their own show to. At the time I was there, he produced not only that film, Fabled Enemies, but I came back and he produced a film called Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. And, I'd always thought the term New World Order was kind of goofy and, almost sci-fi, something the Christians beat their chest about. And it was through my research I found it was anything but. And it was, terminology and ideology that had been around for about a century at the time. Samuel Zane Batten's work, The New World Order, was as far back as I could trace that specific phrase based in a collectivist, authoritarian ideology. And then I also made a film called Shade the Motion Picture, which is now, believe it or not, almost 10 years old. That's the last film that I've made. I've become sort of a talking head. I've done talk radio. I've been around, internet commentary before live streaming was a thing. And currently I am lucky enough to be working for Red Voice Media and doing a daily show Monday through Thursday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
That's awesome. Yeah, after your documentary that I saw when I was young, that's how I kind of segued into like the Alex Jones territory and got like super into him in high school too. So it's crazy to see how people have come to discover him and his work as a person since then, and the complete insane demonization and like his recent court case is just absolutely what are your thoughts on that? I'm curious to hear.
It's tough because I think Alex got a lot wrong on Sandy Hook. That was a little bit after my exit, but I was also very much in touch with people that had still worked there. And, we had little IM chats and we would send each other stories and information. And especially on that one, I was sending certain things that never really got covered by InfoWars. And at the same time, I was warning them against the idea of crisis actors or children not dying. I've done a bunch of work on that. So I thought that Alex would actually lose the vast majority of the Sandy Hook cases in the case of defamation. Now, as to the length of that loss, I didn't think that he would be defaulted and unable to say that he was innocent because obviously the vast majority of those people he never said by name. Now, did Robbie Parker or somebody else, one of the other family members, I believe he named, have a case? Possibly. At the same time, even if he was to be found guilty, etc., it should have been on a much smaller scale, right? Somewhere in the tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands in damages. I think millions would have been pushing it. And they took it to a new level and demonized the guy to the tune of being the billion-dollar man. Now, you have, literal multi-billion-dollar corporations like Bayer, for instance, that back in the late 80s, early 90s actually injected live HIV virus into people. I know that sounds fantastical and it couldn't have happened. Well, I assure you, everybody, it did. They knowingly did this. They injected people in the United States, got caught, sent it off to Europe and Japan after the fact. As far as I know, they didn't pay out billions of dollars. Not even close. Most people signed NDAs. You could talk about the opioid crisis and the rulings there. They didn't pay out billions of dollars. You could even go as far as to look at the Monsanto cases that I think justly and rightfully are finding that their glyphosate product is causing cancer. They're not paying to the tune of billions of dollars. So I am hopeful that somewhere in the appeals process, Alex is able to fight it and at least get those judgments overturned, hopefully get a new trial. But in the post-truth world we live in, where lawfare is being waged at an expansive and extremely heavy-handed manner to people that oppose the narrative, I don't know that I'm that hopeful.
Yeah, I've never seen anything quite like that as far as not only the censorship goes, but I mean, because plenty of people say false things online all fucking day long. But it really seems like, you know, he was made an example of in this era where you'll get censored almost for anything. I've been censored personally a number of times, but that case is particularly terrifying to me, as well as the recent banks shutting down individuals' bank accounts. Is like, these are two new things that I didn't even think were necessarily possible, but this is something that people are cheering on. They're like actually cheering that on when they see that happening to individuals. But anyway, I kind of shared my story of how I went down the rabbit hole initially, but I'm curious to hear your story of how you came to do the work that you do and just have the worldview that you have.
Well, certainly 9/11 is what pushed it over the top. And being, I was 22 at the time. The internet was really a burgeoning thing. I was an internet pirate even then. So I was kind of a media junkie. Instead of, say, torrenting. Torrenting didn't come to be until about 2004. You were using these peer-to-peer programs like Kazaa, and later people were using LimeWire. I only dabbled in that. Morpheus was another one, and these were kind of like Napster for videos. So I had a large video collection. I was interested in documentary films, especially UFOs and alien type information at the time. So I would grab all those documentaries. I was very much aware of the Kennedy assassination, anything to do with that, or MK Ultra. Also kind of piqued my interest, but I didn't think that my government could go as far as 9/11. And, after the event, when I first heard the idea initially of, say, something fishy going on at the Pentagon and La Pentagate, I was like, oh, the French, they'll say anything. Everything's a conspiracy theory. Yeah. What really drove me to look at 9/11 was that I was, already questioning this run-up to the Iraq war and the idea that the media was trying to link bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. That didn't seem to be real. It seemed to me that they did want to go in for the oil reserves at that point, and they wanted to make the case nefariously. So, that kind of opened me up to questioning my government's motives, right? I thought this was going to be wham, bam, we're in, we're out, we got the bad guy, the whole nine, right? You had Bush on an Air Force hangar going, we got him, we did it. Shock and awe. So I'm in my old high school, and it's probably about 6 months to a year after the attack. And I go into my locker room to go change because I'm playing a men's night basketball game. At the time, a couple of my friends I went to high school were now becoming teachers. They were doing their student teaching thing there, and I was going to play ball with them and a couple of my old teachers, etc. So I hadn't been there in a while. And in the urinals, and this isn't just a high school. This is a middle school / high school. So you're talking about kids as young as 12. I graduated like 54 kids. So, very small school. And I looked down in the urinal, and you can look these things up. Anybody can see them. It said Operation Enduring Freedom, and it was bin Laden's face in the toilet. So essentially, you had kids as young as 12 pissing on the face of Osama bin Laden. And something really just clicked with me that was just insane and wrong. I came up in the generation where we were still kind of at odds with Russia. Funny to see that thing come full circle. And we would do duck and cover drills still, the nuclear drills. We wouldn't do under the desk. We would uniformly go out into the hallway, duck and cover in a row against the walls, and that's how we would do it. And I thought to myself, I never pissed on Gorbachev's face. That was never a thing. And this is just next level. I better make sure that this guy did this. So I finish out my basketball with everybody. I really don't say anything about it, or how much it bothers me. But I go home, and it's about an hour away from where I am, and I'm thinking about the entire way. And also I want, I don't want to get myself too distracted. I want a timeline of 9/11. So I come across a website, www.911, 911 the number, timeline.net. And anybody can go check that timeline out still today. A lot of the hyperlinks from it are gone, but it's still up. And it was in the days where, maybe you didn't want to read it off your little CRT monitor and you'd print it off. So I printed it off. It was like 40 pages long. And as I'm reading through it, and then I'm actually clicking on the hyperlinks to see if this information is correct, I'm like, man, this is really bad. Like in the very beginning, even before we get to 12 a.m. to 12 a.m., which is what they do, they kind of give you, a little breakdown of how much the United States spends on defense. And it also gives you a breakdown on how empty the planes were that morning, which was odd to me. It didn't make sense because I traveled. So right out of the gates, things seem weird. I read that. It begins to, put me down this trail or path, if you will, where I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be trusting these people. They had another website called www.911standdown.net. And it was really from there that I became almost obsessed with getting as much raw footage, as many raw files and newsreels about that day as I could. And that's what set me off on my path, really. I was the guy. Funny you talk about getting to burn DVD and go in and watch it. Before DVD burners were even really a thing or commercially viable, I was burning CDRs. So little 700 megabyte CDs with folders of raw footage and PDF files, etc., of like rebuilding America's defenses from the project of a new American century, etc. So that's literally how I got going and fell into this with Dylan and Corey. And I like to think that we kind of pioneered that even before you could go viral on the internet. And we were doing it simultaneously. We're going viral on the internet, but we were encouraged people, just like Alex had done, to get our film, make copies, and hand them out. And so many people across the world did that. And that was just vital in forcing people to at least address the topic. Don't get me wrong, we were largely attacked and demonized, but that kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
With that being said, guys, if you are enjoying this interview, I think it's a broad one. I think it's a really good one. That's why we're showing this. This is the Probably Canceled podcast. Over on Twitter, you can find her, Bridget. I guess it's at Canceled Pod, I think, or at Let's look it up. Let's do it live here as we transition to the paid part of the broadcast. We're gonna say goodbye as we go, but let me see where it is. Here it is, right here. Okay, so if you would like to follow this person, you can do so. In fact, let's give her a follow. Haven't done that. Let her know. And it's the Probably Canceled and at Canceled Pod right there if you want to support this young lady as well. We're going to play the rest of the interview. It goes on for about 40 more minutes, actually, guys. Really good stuff. I really enjoyed this conversation because it gets to do a broad spectrum We're going to watch that. We're going to go over a little bit more of Unzipped Jeans. I hope you guys are enjoying the broadcast. And now we are going to leave each of the big boys right now. Rumble, we love you. Thank you for being that alternative. Make comments, Rumble. Thumbs it up. Share the stuff on Rumble as well, please. Twitter. I could do without the Muskernuts. Is everybody getting over the charade yet? Huh? Old Chris Sky over there. He just went haywire, I guess, over on Jones. I need to watch that about the Musker-Do. Good stuff. Let's see. YouTube.